Hello there. What is going on, everyone? We are on board the bridge of the Enterprise D to talk about Star Trek Into the Unknown, and we have the game developers Michael Gernes and Max Brooke are joining us today to spread the wealth of information that they have. We're going to be talking about all things Into the Unknown and also talking about rising tensions, and I believe you guys have provided some spoilers that we're going to look at as well, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. For people who aren't familiar with you guys and aren't familiar with Star Trek Into the Unknown, do you guys want to give us a quick introduction for anybody who may be joining us for the first time?
Yeah, sure. Max and I have worked together now for over 10 years at various different companies, and I was about to say enterprises, but we'll say game businesses. Uh, we met working for Fantasy Flight Games. We have continued to do freelance work together, and uh, we designed Star Trek Into the Unknown together over the last several years.
It's been a long road from Dust Warfare to here.
Oh, absolutely. I know it's taken a long time to get this game out. I know there were definitely some issues getting it like to everywhere around the globe, but it seems like those complaints have kind of faded off. I think I think the distribution issues have finally kind of settled in, and I'm seeing more and more people that are having the game in their hands and able to like kind of grow this game, and this is good because we have new stuff coming out soon, right? So Rising Tensions is coming out. I want to kick things off with my elephant in the room question for Tensions. It looks exciting. I've seen some of the ships at conventions, and I've seen the box. And while it does look very cool, we're getting 2 Klingon ships and 2 Federation ships in this box. It does kind of add the question, okay, it's great we're providing more depth to the Federation, but Klingons, this is their intro, and it looks like they only get 2 ships. And it looks like like a medium and a small, and is that going to work? Is it going to only work in like this campaign that's going to be there, or like are we going to be able to play incident missions with the Klingons? How is that going to work? And what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so there are 2 ways you can play incident missions. The first is, of course, the new incident missions that are in the box are actually designed and balanced around the idea that you will have fewer ships. So they're basically 4 smaller games. So they're overtures that get you the overtures specifically are
Okay.
designed around that. The other ones will work at any size as they are all designed for, but the overtures start you with a smaller fleet as your default. However, we're also going to be publishing some guidance on how to take those smaller fleet missions and add ships, or how to take a larger fleet mission and remove ships. And it's all pretty straightforward. If you've been around the game design block before, a lot of what's in the article will be pretty familiar. It's a pretty straightforward, if you and your opponent agree to remove stuff or add stuff, you add the stuff. There's a little bit of balancing factor, and there you go.
I see.
But it's solid, concrete guidance that should mean that you can play any of your incident missions with as many ships as you want. You can scale it as much as you want. If you scale it beyond a certain point, it may make your game take a really long time. But if you want to play larger missions than even we've provided previously, now with your extra Federation ships, you can.
Okay. So if somebody were to pick up 2 copies of Rising Tension because they want to have 4 Klingon ships, then there's going to be ways for them to use those.
Correct.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
music to my ears. So that's an exciting thing. Now, we're getting a Vorcha and I want to say it's a Burrell because I don't think it's a Cavort. So it's the smaller bird of prey, right? Okay.
That's the Burrell. Yeah.
Yes. Now, also for people who have been watching, I know the answer to this already, but the wings they do move, correct? Yeah. At least on the Burrell, not the.
Yeah.
It would be weird if they moved on the Vorcha because I don't think
Yeah,
they're
yeah. I
supposed to.
don't. No, I don't think the wings ever moved on the Vortex model, but the wings
Unless they were
on the
blown off.
Varel, yes, then they would move one direction very quickly. The wings on the Burrell, yeah, they are articulated, so you'll be able to move those up and down. Which I love that bit of behind the scenes trivia that the reason they stopped moving for a while in the TV shows is because the maquette stopped working. Uh,
That's awesome.
And it took, and I think it was pretty much until they moved over to using CGI. We didn't. There was a long period of time where we didn't ever really see them move, and I guess it was because the maquette
Mm-hmm.
didn't didn't work, and it was really hard to fix. So
I always
Yeah.
liked the imagery in like I think it was Star Trek Five where it like landed and the wings were like up the whole time, or you know, I always just thought that like that's just such a cool like a functional utility to it. Also, like hey, look, I need to actually be able to step out of this thing, so why not have the wings move? It's a cool thing, and I remember from the old micro machines that used to have very similar things, and this is a continuation of one of the multifaceted reasons why I love this game is that the miniatures have a little bit of a toy factor to them. They kind of trigger that nostalgia, and you started it in the first box with the detachable saucer section, and now we're getting the movable wings, and it's like you just keep firing on all these cylinders that are igniting my inner child, and I love it. So that's a really exciting thing.
I,
WizKid's sculpting team is really pushing the limit. They're doing some great stuff. Sorry, what were you going to say, Mike?
Yeah, no, I was, we always want to give credit to the sculptors. They've been doing an amazing job. Um, but yeah, we wanted to make them fun to play with. At the end of the day, I think we are these games exist as an excuse to play with your toys. But I mean that in the best way. Like as a person who used to play with toys a lot and still plays with them, just in a structured game.
Oh yeah, no, I play a lot. I think the fun factor is my driving focus rather. But yeah, it's like if I can't have fun play, fun facts. This is not even a question, but it's just a little interlude. Is I played in a tournament recently, and it was all online. So it was a little different, but I got to play with a lot of folks, and we were doing this. Like it was like a world series for Star Trek Into the Unknown, and had multiple games, and I went into my first game guns absolutely blazing, and I think I probably lost by like 14 victory points. It was some absurd level. And so then the second game, I decided I was going to go less guns blazing, and I tried to just like, all right, fine, because I was playing Dominion too, so I'm like, I'm going to just thematic it up, and I'm just going to be like, death to the Federation. So the second game, I decided it was Dominion versus Dominion, and I was like, all right, well, let me try to do missions, and the other player sat back, is like, all right, go ahead, do your missions, and I'm like, oh, I'm getting all these victory points. Oh, it's working now. I'm actually because I take a very aggressive approach to the game, which is why I lose most of my games, but was I'm a little overzealous. So I decided, let me just start doing this, and then I remembered, oh, the Dominion they get to basically go hostile if you're too many victory points ahead of them. And then of course it was guns blazing on me, and since they did it right, of course I lost that game too. So then going into my third game, decided to do a balanced approach, but still did some guns blazing, and I lost that one by an even wider margin. So lost all of my games so far, but they're thematic and memorable experiences each time, and I also get to play with my toys to bring it all full circle. So I think that's what makes it so much fun, is that if you're getting to play and also tell a narrative during the game, that it's a really fun experience. So also my
So
kudos to the sculpting team as well.
we're gonna be talking later today about a character who I think you're really gonna like.
I
I think
think
this
so.
character might be. I think this character might be a play style maker for you. Sometimes there are game pieces like that where there's something that just like you want a strategy to work, and then eventually the game, when it has as content comes in, you're like, oh, this is how that strategy works. So we'll get to that when we get to it. But I think this is going to be. I think a certain wide-eyed character is going to have
Yeah,
some appeal to your playstyle.
I'll say this. I'm very excited. I did peek a little bit before we started. So yes, I'm going to have questions, but there's going to be a lot of opportunity for exposition. So I'm looking forward to that. And I know the audience watching is like, get to it. Get to the spoilers. We're going to get to the spoilers. We're going to get there. But before we get into any card specific spoilers, I want to talk about some of the new things we're going to see in Rising Tensions. Because I know some people were thinking, wait a second, how come the Defiant in the core set, it doesn't cloak? Where's cloaking? There was some initial, speculation. There was some initial stuff that, the cloaking might have been in the core set. but this was where it was going to show up. It was going to show up here. So there's very little that's known about cloaking. I know that, having played through the campaign, there's some there's some stealth mechanics. So what can you tell us about cloaking? Is it going to be like stealth? Is it going to be different? And also, will it be different between the Federation, like for the Defiant? Will that have a different way of using cloaking than the Klingons will, for example?
So the cloaking you've seen so far, the stealth rules, you could think of that as like a way for us to give you some pseudo cloaking with just the box set. But the actual cloaking rules are different. We set out to design something that's a lot more robust, and we were trying to be very different from a lot of our previous game experiences, basically because cloaking is such a big part of Star Trek. Like this whole faction, the Klingons, cloaking is their thing. So we're doing some things with hidden information, and we'll get into that in a second. But to answer your other question, there is a universal set of cloaking rules, and everybody uses that. But the abilities that on your ship that trigger your cloaking, they're going to cost different amounts of reserve, different amounts of skill level icons, those sort of things.
So it's similar to if you not everybody can go to impulse the same way. It might cost more power for this ship, and it might be easier for another ship. So you're gonna have different conditions to trigger a cloak depending upon a ship.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but in terms of how the cloaking works, cloaking did not end up in the core set. We did design it alongside the core set. We knew it was going to be really important for this game. And there was a period of time where we thought we might put it in the core set. And at one point we had to sit down with Alex Davey, and Alex said, you know what? This is going to overwhelm players. This is one thing too many. We need to let players learn the game and then introduce this, because this cloaking system is really cool, but it is too much to throw at people all at once. And he was completely right about that. The cloaking system is, I'm really proud of what we came up with. I think it is going to be a lot of fun for people. We really looked back at episodes like Balance of Terror, and other classic cloaking battle episodes, because we knew this was going to have to cover not just one faction who's kind of defined by cloaking, but two. And so cloaking is really meant to be this game of cat and mouse that really evokes the things you want to see, and like, oh, is this oh, where are they? Are there any environmental hints that I might be able to use? There are some little hints sprinkled into the core set, actually, like the Jem'Hadar fighter's ability to do an antipolar on beam.
Right.
It's definitely going to be very different from the cloaking that you've seen before in X-Wing or in other games. I'm sure there are games out there that have done something similar, because there are many games and I don't know them all. But I don't personally know of any minis game that has done cloaking this way, and I think people are going to really like it.
I'm definitely excited. You have a Romulan in there. I believe it's Turul, who we saw when the Defiant was first introduced. That, of course, it was kind of funny, because if we go back to Deep Space Nine, when they introduced the Defiant, and it's very at the beginning of its introduction, it's like, whoa, the Federation have a ship that they have a treaty, and they're allowed to use it, but only if she's on board to observe it and to basically do it. And it's funny how quickly they kind of got away, and they just I don't know if they chucked her out an airlock or what they did, but I
think she shows up again, doesn't she?
Yeah, she's in the two-parter, The Search.
Yeah.
So she has some screen time, but and I think mostly to set up the fact that the Federation has a cloaking device that's on loan from the Romulan Empire.
But so she's not required to be on board for the Defiant to cloak, for example.
No, but she is helpful to have.
I've seen some of the spoilers, and it looks like at least there's a movement portion involved with cloaking and or decloaking, and it seems like her ability to to let you re-engage that gives you some mobility. Based on the spoiler, that's kind of how it looks.
It's not just mobility. It's also it resets the state of hidden information.
Oh, oh, very interesting. So, do you think there's some bluffing that goes into it as well?
I certainly hope so. There will definitely every time I've played with cloaking, there's been bluffing.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Okay, I'm very excited for that. Um, since you mentioned you brought up, so I have a follow up to your point about Alex, suggesting that this may be a little bit information overload for new players. Do you think that leads to maybe saying that maybe the Klingons aren't the best faction for somebody like playing their first game?
Um,
I think that's fair.
You know,
I think that's fair to say. They're definitely not a starter faction in some ways. Although the one thing I will say about the Klingons to be effective them, they may be good for certain players. If you want to
like
play
me.
the game a certain way,
Yeah.
they may actually be the best faction to start with
Well,
because
and I
they probably have the
Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, and I
No, no, go
suppose
ahead.
you could play a game without using every possible option. Like you could just play a game that, hey, you know what, we're just not gonna cloak this game. You know.
There are missions where you may just decide, cloaking doesn't really help me in this mission, or like maybe I'll use it when the complication comes around, but I don't need to start cloaked because I don't really care if you know where I am. Um, and so there are definitely cloaking is an ability you will probably not use every game, although you will use it frequently. It is quite good.
Okay, awesome. No, and I imagine it's something that you probably would want to use because heck, if anything else, it just probably lowers your threat. Lowers your risk of somebody just pulling one of the maneuvers that I like to do is like, haha, I'm going to take -2 victory points and just attack you for no reason. So,
It definitely makes that trickier.
yeah, I can imagine. The mission I played that had stealth in the campaign, there was a shuttle. I want to say or maybe it was a runabout
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
had stealth, and it was so hard to hit. It was very hard to hit, and so that alone was like, well, I better just do some objectives then. Twist my arm, why don't you? Um, so also with the Rising Tensions box, I know there's it looks like we're getting some extra crew. I know since we had the Enterprise in the core set, but we didn't get all of the Enterprise crew. We've seen a couple of spoilers. We can see that Riker is in there. I think I've seen Geordie LaForge. My question is about depth. Like, how is this like your last opportunity to be able to fill out the Enterprise roster? And how deep are we going to go? Are we going to see things like Dr. Pulaski or my goat Wesley Crusher? Are we going to see like how deep are we going? Or or what can you tell us about the depth that we're going to go? Is this our last chance to see certain characters like that?
I certainly hope not. It shouldn't be. We well, Mike, you want to speak about this?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, the short answer is no. We have, but you're getting, I guess, what we would consider kind of the core bridge crew
Okay.
for the USS Enterprise D from the height of that series.
So Nurse Ogawa confirmed. No.
Yeah.
No,
I do
awesome.
like Nurse
Awesome.
Ogawa, but yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
So
but
now I'm thinking, and I'm not gonna look at you in the eyes, even though it says on a web conference. But I'm thinking like Data and Troy probably also. But you don't have to confirm. I'm not looking. You don't have to nod. Anyway.
let's just say those are good guesses.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are very good
Your-
guesses.
Yeah,
Yeah, your empath ability is clearly working.
that would be a fun one. Honestly, it would be really fun to see Loaxana Troy, even though this might not be the expansion for her. I feel like she would have. I think you guys would have so much fun working on like certain super fun characters like her, and like the way theme you have built it into this game. It makes me think about those ancillary characters, those characters that just show up once in a while, and it's like, oh, this could be so much fun in this game. Like maybe she makes an officer on the other team fall in love with her. I don't know, but I don't know what you guys would come up. You know what? I'm afraid to say things like this, so I'm going to move on because there have been times where we have talked about stuff, and then like a year later, like, yeah, you remember when you asked about that? We already knew the answer. So
Oh, like when you told us how we should make a Star Trek game?
yes. Oh gosh, one of these days somebody's gonna like link that clip because it's like I went back and I found it after we talked about this last time, and I was like, when I found the time that I interviewed them and I talked about they should make a Star Trek game. And sure enough, you guys kind of had that little look into the camera, like, "Oh, you think?" Oh, no, that's wonderful. So talking about crew, I had a question for you guys because we've seen. I talked about the goat at least for the Federation, but I got to talk about the goat for the Klingons, and that's my man Gowron. So can we talk a little bit about Gowron and why is he 15 points? Because like 15, we haven't seen anybody 15 points, and I mean I think it's probably if there's any good reason, it's got to be those eyes. Because
yeah, you're paying a premium for those.
yeah, and the artwork is fantastic, by the way. But this is a great time to bring up spoilers, so the people who are watching at home, they've been waiting for this moment, and let's go ahead and jump right into it. So let's talk a little bit about him, and because we also have the back to show as well. But yeah, he's got 2 health, 15 points, and he's got some skills. But this is all we've seen so far, right?
Yeah. And just to speak a little bit about the art, so this is pretty much all the character likenesses so far, at least, have been done by Kurt Komoda, who's a really great artist. He's done some really, really good stuff. And this is one of my favorites of his.
I think he really captured the eyes. He captured like a good mid-level before he kind of fell into craziness, right? He captured like Gowron at the height of his power here. I feel like he's got that aura. But like the lips too, and the cheekbone, like everything in there is just wonderful. Should we show the back?
Yeah, let's show the back.
All right. So this, I'm just gonna read over it real quick. Diplomacy 2, Ordnance 1, Skirmish 1, Navigation 1, and I'm gonna start with the top ability with his Qapla'. He's got Qapla'. During the ready phase, you may set one of your calm directives to hostile. But if you do that, you have to do it in the following order. So with diplomacy first, then explore, and then finally combat. I got that the order right there, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's talk about that first one for a little bit. That's incredible. Now, Qapla' means he has to have a victory token, correct?
He does. He needs to have found glory.
And
But
and it has to be on him, or can it be on his ship?
It has to be on him. But as Michael points out,
and so it says after he leads a hail, which is going to be good for him with diplomacy too. Like he could probably has a better chance except for Picard, but he could probably be very competent in that. After he leads a hail, if you were persuasive, you may choose a friendly officer in Gowron's unit and move all of the victory banked on them onto Gowron, which is like so. First reactions, that looks like it's so thematic. Like right after he became Chancellor, there's this episode where like Picard is talking, and then like they won't give him an office because he's busy rewriting the history books. And I'm like that's exactly what he's doing. He's like, actually, it was due to my excellent leadership why we got all these tokens. I mean, was that I'll let you guys talk about it, but that's my first impression. I was like, that's incredible.
yeah, so I mean, Max wrote the first ability, and I think the second I really occurred to me because of episodes like that, and like Worf's experiences. Everything like that, and it kind of clicked because I was like, oh well, Gowron's a good politician and he's good at stealing glory from other people. So
this is a great design teamwork card, yeah, because we had the first part, which was playing well, but he needed a little bit more flexibility in activating it, and this really helped get him there. And that's where a large chunk of your 15 points is coming from. So. To get under the hood a little bit of our officer design rubric, we essentially have a sort of a way we set points value for starting to test. We basically say like, okay, like a butt in a seat is probably worth about this many points, and then we have these skill ranks that's worth about this. We have these keywords that's worth about this. Klingons in general are going to be a little expensive because they have 2 health, which means they're paying a little bit for the extra health. And then ability is just an X factor. Like, you can't really, they tend to be pretty incomparable. So we just have to sort of say, like, this seems like it's worth about this, probably, and we'll test it and see how he does. Gowron got increased during testing, I think, a couple times. His ability is very potent. He's paying a lot for it, but it is very worth it because he is, he's kind of like in Armada. You get some admirals are, just like, oh, they're a solid ability that that doesn't change the fundamentals of the faction. Then there's others that are like, oh, this really makes me want to play a certain way.
Absolutely.
And he's a play a certain way type character where he, if you're building around Gowron, you're building around Gowron.
Absolutely. And I think this also really changes the way you kind of choose which complication you want too, because you may just chill out the whole time until, this is going to come out. You're going to have to stay calm, but I'm going to be able to, I know the first two are going to be orange and I'm going to switch, this way I can, and because you can make sure you just have tokens by then as well. Oh, wow.
And we really wanted to cover the fact that Gowron launches the Klingon Cardassian War with just at the worst possible time, but he's like, well, I got my own internal problems. I got to give these Klingons something to do, so we're going to war.
I'm gonna be playing this guy so much. This is gonna be wonderful. I love it. I also find that it also can show a little bit of his. I don't want to say. I'll say self-preservation, because now he can keep all these. He doesn't have to go on an away team. He's not always going to be fighting the Federation. He might have to face some Jem'Hadar troops, and he's like, you know what? You go down to the surface. I'll keep the victory points safe on the bridge. And that's a real thing to consider. That's happened on a couple of my games where you're stockpiling points on your away teams, and that is a very interesting way to do it.
Well, and especially for Klingons, that really plays to their whole dynamic. And so Qapla' is really, sort of like if there are two sort of poles that, are key to the Klingon faction, one is, obviously the Cloaking, and the other is Qapla'. And, so with Qapla', you really want to be, venturing boldly, but taking risks. So you're keeping that VP banked. And as long as the character survives or dies and doesn't get captured, you're fine. They can get incapacitated as long as they fight, to the end. It's just getting captured that causes them to lose their glory. So Klingons have that kind of an interesting set of incentives where they really don't want their officers to get captured in a battle.
So is Qapla' something we're going to see on all or most Klingons?
Not all Klingons, because some Klingons aren't as into Klingon ideals as others. We play with this a little bit with a couple of the characters in there. Some of them who are a little more jaded about the way Klingon society is might not have Qapla', but generally most Klingons have Qapla'. It's the exceptions who don't.
Absolutely. I know that the timeline for this, we talked about this in the past, and that it's there's a certain time, but there are certain great Klingons that might not have been alive at the same year that this game kind of starts. So is there a little bit of kind of wiggle room there, or
there's some flex?
Okay, well, that's cool. I don't want to press too hard because there's already enough spoilers here. I don't want to overload, but that gives me a little bit of speculation.
We made a decision that while we are trying to tell more or less, the story of the Dominion War, we wanted to be flexible enough for people to play with all their toys, have the kind of characters that we all love, because this is,
at the end of the day, this is Star Trek, and we all have attachment to certain characters. So if they're in the ballpark of the era, that's what's important to us.
I think that's the right way to go. Sometimes it's a theme versus function, and let's err on the side of let's have a good time and let's make it fun for the most number of people. And it's hard to go wrong when you do that.
Well, we try to include a lot of player choice here too. So, for instance, you have the option to run these characters, but if you want to run a really timeline accurate battle, you just don't include them.
Yeah, that's true. Or honestly, if you wanted to get down to it, you could always say this is an equivalent of somebody else who had the same skill set that also happened to be alive at that time.
That's true as well. Yeah. Yes, you could do that. Or it is Star Trek. It could just be lost in time, from an alternate universe. Could be a 2 Harry Kim situation.
Will he get promoted? Apparently,
Well, if he
the rumor is
does,
he eventually did. Now, if in one of the recent trailers is showing stuff, but yeah, no, and of course, Lower Decks has like all the Harry Kims, right? So
yeah, I love that episode.
it's really good. I need to do a rewatch of that. All right, so we're gonna keep going. We got more spoilers because one of the things I had a question about was, with Klingons, and we were talking about it a little bit with their boarding teams. They have a boarding party here, and this looks pretty strong because it's a way of kind of giving basically kind of looks like they have Qapla' themselves. So yeah, so talk to us about the boarding. Now, this is the boarding party A. There's going to be multiple boarding parties. It looks like. So yeah.
Well, so this is the alpha boarding, but they're the same alpha, beta, gamma team teams everyone else does. So so this is there are multiple. You can have multiple boarding parties. But boarding party is sort of your default Klingon combat team. Although every Klingon team is to some degree a combat team. Which is another interesting faction difference where, Jem'Hadar, you have these nasty Jem'Hadar assault squads, but then the other, like teams available to the Dominion aren't as combat focused. Klingons this is the most pure combat focused of the Klingon teams, but they're all pretty competent in combat. So they're durable. They benefit from having an officer who has attained glory. We'd originally played around with the teams themselves having Qapla'. It got a little bit just mechanically cumbersome, and I don't remember if it was your idea, Mike, or mine, or whatever. Someone came up with the idea that we just have the teams have an effect that works with Qapla', and then it actually worked a lot better because now it's like, oh, my officers attained glory. I'm going to send them to do this thing, and then their team will be even better.
They're more motivated. They're drinking blood wine. They're sharpening their batleths. And they have disruptors and batleths as well.
They do.
Yes, which is really cool.
But yeah, a boarding team can definitely go toe-to-toe with the Jem'Hadar assault team. They have slightly different roles, and they don't have the concealment ability that the Jem'Hadar do. But yeah, they fight well. They fight well, and they drink blood wine well, and they don't do a heck of a lot else.
Yeah. They don't seem like they're going to be doing emergency repairs quite so well, but.
Yeah, they skipped science class.
Awesome. That was very cool. We also have some directives to look at. Are you good for me to move on to that, or is there anything else we want to?
Yeah, you can see how these guys fit into that.
Yeah, exactly. So with this in mind, we're going to look at. We'll start with the diplomacy, and this is our calm directive called boisterous demeanor. You want to talk us through this one? Whichever one.
Yeah, so this is we made the decision with the game. I think a lot of people might expect the Klingons are going to be really belligerent, and they are, or capable of it, but that fits into the framework of our game, which is assumes it's a Star Trek episode, and people usually are going to talk at the start. And most missions you start out calm. But what we tried to do here is capture that their faction hail is all about drinking blood wine and getting pumped up and inspired. And you can kind of see that with this hail. You're rewarded for actually trusting, and then you're going to get out some inspiration from that.
One thing we noticed when rewatching a bunch of Klingon episodes was that the Klingons, sometimes they just jump out of cloak and shoot you, but most of the time, because it's an episode of TV and you need to set stuff up, what actually happens is the Klingons call the Federation up and they're like, oh, we're mad about this thing, and we're going to cut out your hearts, and we're going to drink blood wine. And then, Picard or whoever, Cisco is like, all right, well, here's how it's going to go down. And there's this sort of like, the Klingons respond to people sort of meeting them on their own terms, and, respond to this like force of personality. So we liked this idea that like, you only get the benefit if you, sort of like engage in good faith, then you like sort of, like meet them with the energy they're bringing. But this also leads to some interesting things because if you want to be sort of a tricksy Klingon player who's a little more willing to like use cultural expectations to your advantage, you can, maybe use this to like draw out a high token early if there's a mission hail. Um, and you actually put in a low token and like don't get the benefit, but then you are like so you can Klingons like Gowron or Duras who like play to people's expectations about Klingons, but then do the opposite when it's beneficial. Especially Gowron is very good at that, where he'll be sneaky when it benefits him, he'll be direct when it benefits him, and you're never sure which exactly you're dealing with.
And
So
also,
yeah,
you have the opportunity to potentially set your exploration directive to hostile by doing this too, which seems like this is really potentially an opener, but you have to win. So
yes.
Yeah, and also have spare dice results to trigger that, which I think that's really interesting because it being a difficulty 3 test, you're not even always guaranteed to win.
It's also your exploration directive. So you can actually continue to hail people. This was one of the important things about, this game is we wanted there to be combat sometimes, even if combat directive had not gone hostile yet. And the exploration directive really gave us that space where, the Klingons will start punching people. They'll be starting fights. They'll be, like starting a brawl in a space station, but they won't necessarily have escalated to ship hostilities yet. And that gives you that space to do that of like, okay, we're going to sort of start to inch forward our position, but we're not actually going to start fully fighting in earnest yet. And so we wanted to keep that open of like, Klingons can definitely interact in diplomatic oriented missions, but they're going to interact in a Klingon way.
Mm-hmm. And of course, if you refuse, it goes hostile, and we have that here as well.
They love a good taunt, and they're always ready to be offended.
No, absolutely. But you can still answer hails with this. And of course, somebody else can set theirs to hostile after you refuse. But this is talking about incapacitating officers and scoring victory points this way. So again, it goes into your boarding teams. It goes into that melee combat, and gaining honor from defeating their enemies in battle.
It is a little bit different, just a little bit, than the Dominion, which wants to capture officers.
Because incapacitate, you can leave them there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, the Klingons they don't really care that much about prisoners.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Awesome. We talked about the exploration directive. Here we also have that, starting with the calm side, called Glory Awaits. It's outlining the teams that you're going to have. So we've already seen the boarding party, but it also tells us that we're going to have an honor guard and a repair team, and it talks a little bit about other ways we can score victory points. So you guys want to kind of go into this one a little bit?
Yeah, so we wanted the Klingons to one thing we see a lot with the Klingons, we see this in TOS, we see this in TNG, we see this in Deep Space Nine. Honestly, this is a pretty consistent thread, is the Klingons like to, when they're in a sort of an interstellar diplomatic situation, they like to test the limits. And they like to really push, sort of push and see what they can get away with, and also push their enemies. In some ways, they almost want to push their enemies to, in at least in the best cases of this, the most earnest cases of this, they almost want to push their enemies to excel as well, right? Because they don't want to defeat like weak enemies; they want to defeat strong enemies. And so we wanted you to really have sort of an incentive to get up in your opponent's grill and with your stuff. So you want to put your stuff near their stuff. If they're going to the objective over there, well, you're going to the objective over there too, and you're going to do it better than them. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted, and that works well with their diplomacy directives. Then all of a sudden you've got your teams in the same place, and oh look, mine just went hostile. Now I can shoot you. So we wanted all that to sort of mesh together nicely into a set of directives where you have this faction that is very belligerent, is getting up in people's grill even before the blasting each other starts.
Now, it does seem that because there's multiple ways to set this one to hostile, that this may be the card you see the least. out of all of these, since we've seen already three potential ways between your diplomacy directive being able to turn this one hostile as well as the bottom of this card. So let's go ahead and flip this one over and see what we have. And this is deeds worthy of song. By the way, I love the names that you've come up with for these. They're very thematic and appropriate. And this shifts our boarding parties a little bit here, and so you lose the ability to do honor guard on Team A and Team B. So this is you're gonna have a little bit more, I guess more boarding parties here, but also more ways to score victory points.
Yeah, so this one directly incentivizes you to, like all combat directive hostile sides do, you want to destroy enemy units, but this one really likes it if you destroy enemy teams.
Mm-hmm. And also, or if you disable a ship too, which is, but it's got to be, I think it's got to be a capital ship, yeah?
So after you destroy an opposing team or disable an opposing ship of any kind, score VP. If it was a capital, score 2 VP instead.
Oh, times 2, yes, yeah. Well, that's, yeah, I'm just reading these kind of for the first or second time. Again, I peeked just before we got here, but I still wanted my reactions to be mostly fresh. So, yeah, so, and that's kind of in keeping with this standard stuff. Capital ships tend to give the most. So when you're blowing stuff up, that's kind of, you see that sort of across the board. It's one of those, I guess, the risks of bringing capital ships and putting them in danger versus your smaller ships. But also they tend to be the hardest to take out. So. But yeah, so this one looks pretty cool, but let's get to my favorite, the combat directive. So we have uphold the Empire's oaths. This one doesn't really tell you a whole lot right away. It's just like, no, do nothing, just hold your fire, except, of course, how to, of course, flip it to its hostile side. And of course, when one of your units does a hostile act or an opposing player does a hostile act. I noticed that you don't get to flip it for free if somebody's ahead of you in victory points anymore. So you don't have the same, you're not like the Jem'Hadar in this case. You've got to provoke somebody to fight if you want to get the free version, or just take the negative victory points.
We liked the idea that the Dominion is a little bit more pragmatic than the Klingons. The Klingons are a little bit more, they're very bellicose. They're engaged in this, and they may well use like tactics to try to create incentive, to create casus belli. They may try to but they'll sort of usually like escalate on things. And so we wanted to really get across that idea that these are interconnected, and they're these interconnected conditions, and you have as you manipulate one, it's going to be manipulating the others. So you're sort of playing toward getting it to the point that your opponent is going to make a hostile act against you or what have you, because you're sort of pushing more and more and more there. So, yeah, the Klingons are almost, if the Jem'Hadar are sort of like, or if the Dominion is sort of like, oh, if I'm losing, I no longer need to wait on this. Mm-hmm. This is more like you want to set up the dominoes and then push them over, and you'll get, after a few go down, you'll get to the fighting you want to do.
And the fighting we want to do it is a good day to die, of course. People were like, how come they haven't named one of these cards that today's a good day to die yet? Now you finally have. So, Mike, you want to talk us through this one?
Yeah, this is it's a fairly standard combat directive. I think the main exception here that's interesting is you can inspire units if your friendly ship dies gloriously in battle.
Mm-hmm. Which makes it, of course, a good day to die, because and that's really thematic. It's straightforward. It's what you would expect, but it has that extra bonus and theme attached to it, which is great. But this is not the only way that they're scoring victory points. So, like, one of my questions for you guys was to be like, how are the Klingons going to play and what sets them apart? And I think all of these spoilers kind of go into that, in that it's, of course, combat is one of their main ways, but not only that, the boarding teams and the transferring and the Qapla' and all of that is, it kind of creates a picture of how one might play the Klingons and serve the Empire and pass victory tokens over to Gowron for safekeeping. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say like we designed them to engage with all the parts of the game, and like you saw with their diplomacy directive, they can use guile to manipulate things, and they do want to get to hostility a lot. Where they're gonna struggle is they have ways to cope and do science objectives, but they're not going to excel at it.
No, absolutely. And it's that leads me to two different questions. But before I get to those, I want to touch, because Max, you mentioned the art. I do love the art here. It is spectacular, and that we've seen for everything. But this one is a great piece. We've seen some other art in Captain's Chair, and so WizKids is kind of I think we've seen this before in other games too, where some art assets can be reused amongst multiple games. If people were going to some people have speculated that, like, oh, if we've seen it in Captain's Chair, that means it's also coming here. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Does that mean, like, is it more of a case where Captain's Chair is feeding directly into this, or is it that you're like maybe pulling from the same pile and just leveraging art assets differently?
Well, most of these pieces are new pieces. As I said, these are Kurt Komodo pieces, and most of these are commissioned for these games. But we are certainly coordinating with Captain's Chair. With John Schaefer has said, like, oh, we know Captain's Chair is going to do this, and we've said, oh, great, we can use that character or this character. So there's certainly some overlap. Captain's Chair covers a lot of eras that we're not covering at the moment. That's not to say that we never could, but I don't necessarily know that we're going to cover stuff in, some of the areas that they've got stuff in. But certainly I think anything that's in era in Captain's Chair, if we're going to do it anyway, it's nice to have a piece already. It certainly makes it easier from a logistical standpoint. So I think you can look to what's in our game and Captain's Chair and Captain's Chair in our game and say, like, okay, those are probably somewhat likely, but there's no guarantee. If it doesn't make sense, we're not going to shoehorn it in just because it's a Captain's Chair, and I'm sure Captain's Chair is the same way. They've got their own design considerations, and but I'm sure they're always happy to get a good piece pre-done. Saves everybody some time. So
the conspiracy theories of this is there and this is there, they can continue there, but this is not a confirmation or a denial.
Yes, I can neither confirm nor deny any specific appearances based on presence or absence in Captain's Chair.
I do like how I'm going to get off of this topic in a second, but I do like how they've done some of the animated characters, and they've just they haven't tried to draw them as realistic as possible. They're just like, no, these ones are going to be animated, and I love that. All right, let's get back. I've got more questions. Thank you so much for the previews, and everybody is now going to close out the video. It's like, I got all the good stuff. No, we got more questions. We got more good stuff. So you talked a little bit about, I think, Michael, you talked a little bit about how the Klingons can still do other stuff. So that does make me think, we have seen other really cool characters. I think Next Generation had so many, but DS9 has had quite a few too, where we see Klingon scientists and Klingon physicists and things like that. So Are a lot of the other Klingons going to be kind of randos, or can we expect to see some recognizable Klingons like Duras, or the Sisters of Duras, or Kahless, or and there's plenty. The list goes on and on. I'm not is it going to be more is it going to be more generics, or do you think there'll be some recognizable names in there as well?
I think you could think of this as a Klingon's greatest hits tour.
That's awesome. I love that.
Like, we have strategically chosen characters to fit roles.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that most of our fans, or most fans of Star Trek, would have a top 5 of famous Klingon scientists. Mm-hmm. So there are characters that do those things who maybe aren't as recognizable, but we kind of decided that in kind of the pyramid, diplomacy and battle are kind of the Klingons' 2 top things. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the characters we chose are geared around that. And as it happens, a lot of those characters are people that you would expect to see.
That's awesome. Okay,
But
we'll let the speculation based on that commence. Let me know in the comments your top 5 Klingons that because why not? That's a great opportunity for a comment section. All right.
top 5 Klingon scientists, go.
Top
Yeah,
five
top 5 Klingon
Klingon
scientists.
scientists.
But
Wow.
to that point, we did want to make sure that Klingons had good skill coverage. I mean, obviously, you can use Sway, which we will be, explaining the rules for finally in the lead up to this expansion. You can use Sway to get access to some stuff from other factions potentially. So if you really want to have a great scientist around, you can have Worf hop over because he's got dual faction, and then suddenly Jadzia becomes a potential option as one of your transfer officers.
That's
But
that's a great option. Yeah, I like that
But-
because go ahead. Yeah.
oh no, I was just gonna say, but we use the generics to make sure you have basic coverage of everything too.
No,
so
for sure.
you're not totally out of water. It's just in the same way that Federation doesn't have as much focused combat stuff as Klingons or Dominion. Klingons don't have as much focused science stuff.
No,
But yes.
that makes sense. There's not as many episodes I can really recall that have notable Klingon scientists, but there are a few. I can actually think of more Klingon diplomats than I can think of Klingon scientists. So some really cool options, and I think my gears are already running. You mentioned Sway, which makes me also want to throw a follow up. Have you thought about using Sway for pulling a ship in to be able to do like a 3-ship incident mission? Is that something that players will be able to do with what comes in the Rising Tensions box?
Yes, we have thought about that.
Okay.
Yes, Sway could be a way to bolster your collection. Sway. So I mean, we won't get into the full rules here today, but I'll just say that the full rules are forthcoming soon.
Excellent.
And Sway does potentially let you bring in ships from other factions. We felt very strongly that that moment where Worf has called in some Klingon support
Yes.
for the mission with the Romulans was important to be able to do that. And so, that is a thing you can do. You may need more Sway than you would just to bring in an officer. You might have to stack up Sway with a couple people for the bigger displays. But yeah, we'll have more on Sway later.
I'm looking forward to that. That sounds very exciting because it does mean that you can build more. It seems like if you have a dream fleet in mind, but it doesn't happen to fit within the norms as they are today, stay optimistic. Okay, cool. So, all right, so one of the things I do want to talk about is, since we've seen our core set come out and Rising Tensions is coming out, it does feel like there have been some delays, and it seems like maybe we're looking at like 1 pack a year, and I don't know it's obviously too early to be able to say that will always be the case, but are we going to see other things come out like ship packs? And I know that we saw that one Enterprise ship pack. Are we going to see more things that come out? Because there's obviously Klingon ships that people want beyond the 2 that are in here. So can you guys talk a little bit about ship packs or things things coming out to kind of fill in the gaps between larger releases?
Yeah, without getting super specific. Yes.
Okay.
More ship packs are planned. That's definitely a thing that WizKids and we are interested in doing. So I can't necessarily tell you exactly what's coming up next at this moment.
Is it going to be awesome?
I think we could say that. Yeah, for sure.
I want to give you some easy answers too, but yeah, no, I mean, I'm excited for just about anything. So maybe I'm an easy sell.
I can say those pictures of a cloaked bird of prey may be significant.
We're looking forward to that. Yes, there was some unsure information on what exactly those were coming in at the time, but so we'll be standing by for official news.
Stay tuned for official news.
Yeah,
we'll get some good information soon, I think.
That's a very good thing.
We've also been
go ahead.
We've been talking to WizKids about options for this too, because it's definitely we are seeing, and WizKids has seen real hunger from the fan base for sort of more things in between the longer gaps between the exploration packs. And so that's something we've been talking to them about. And again, without getting into any specifics, there is an awareness of this and a desire to address it.
Wonderful.
So we hope that next time we're on here, we'll be able to tell you how great our solution worked or something.
Well, I hope so as well. And on that note, I know that there's obviously more, more races and more factions that you guys would like to do. There was definitely some leaked titles of things that have come out years ago, and a long time ago at least. Is it fair to say that, like, as a new race comes out, it'll be like a big box expansion, kind of like what we're looking at here with Rising Tensions, or is that kind of undetermined at this time?
Rising Tensions is kind of our standard exploration pack size, at least for the time being, per current plan. And I believe WizKids has actually announced the next exploration pack as well, at least in terms of that title you're talking about.
Right.
I think that was an announcement, not a leak.
I think it was an announcement, but I think it was at Gamma, so it was like to a closed
Yeah,
audience.
it was a while ago.
So
it was a while ago.
And things changed too, so that's why
Yeah.
I'm just like, who knows? Who knows if it's still the same?
That product is moving forward.
Well, that's
so there's and I don't think that's any secret. There's so the exploration pack of that size is kind of the default for now. And I mean, obviously game ones evolve, there's who knows what will be the best delivery method in the long run, but that's sort of what we're trying for now. And we'll see how it goes. But we have some ideas for some other things that are maybe a little less intensive to get to market. They could get out a little faster and hopefully give people, especially people who are both doing campaign stuff and doing incident mission, standalone, match play incident missions, give them a little more fodder for keeping their games lively.
Awesome.
over those what do they call it in Voyager in that episode when they're like in the void or whatever, when they're
the place without stars.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can seem like that when you're really, I mean, sometimes it feels bad, but sometimes it feels really good when people are like thirsty for more content because they're just that passionate about it, because this is, this fires on so many cylinders and just it works so well that it can really make you want more. And, like at the end of the day, it's kind of a mixed bag. You want people to be happy, but you also kind of want to keep people a little thirsty for more. And so, but it can be hard to balance that sometimes, especially when things are out of your control, which has certainly been the case. I think across the board for multiple companies. On the topic of like ship packs and other things coming, I kind of want to touch into, as we move forward and we're adding new factions and stuff. If people like, let's say somebody really likes the Dominion or whatever, are you done with them, or is that something? Are you going to be looking at ways to go back and add stuff like after this comes out? And you move on to something else? Are you going to go? Will the plan be to kind of revisit Klingons and add more depth to them, add more depth to Dominion? I think there's, maybe another ship that some people want to see from the Dominion at some point. Like, can you speak a little bit to that effort?
Yeah, we're not done with the Dominion forever. I would say we've been very strategic in our planning for releases because, as you may have noticed as a Star Trek fan, not every species has the same number of ship designs.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, like the Dominion has a pretty small array. There's some extras, there's some side cases, but what we've opted to do is to, I don't think it's a secret, make more ships available to the Dominion through the alliances that they set up organically within that series.
Oh, they do have some friends. Well, temporary.
They do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, vassals. Something.
As long as they have enough Kanar, I think they'll serve just fine.
Client states.
Mm-hmm.
Client states, that might be the best term. Yeah, the Dominion's an interesting one because they're all about those alliances of convenience into client state relationships. And so, if this game line gets to go as long as we sort of planned out at the outset, and we hope it does. The Dominion probably won't, they won't have like tons and tons of ships. We're not going to make up new Dominion ships. That's not really in our remit, or when we're not really interested in doing that. But the Dominion will have access to quite a few ships because they pick up quite a lot of allies along the way of the story.
Do.
So
okay, well,
so
and you
there
also
are
do
some good
have
options.
sway, so there's lots of ways you can make something just Dominion, or I guess I can't really think of too many people who are naturally friendly between the Dominion and Federation, for example. So I don't really see them pulling in the Enterprise to join the Dominion, but you do have sway with other factions. So there's I think I can see a lot of different ways to do that. Whether they be standalone or that's pretty cool stuff.
The only faction that basically can't run out of ships is the Federation.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Federation has so many ships, especially since we know that so many of the ships, even from the late TOS era, are still in service into into DS9 and beyond. So
Yes.
I mean, technically we could run out of Federation ships, but we won't.
Okay. I think my last question is when are we getting Deep Space Nine? Because I need a giant space station, right? I mean, like, look, it's DS9 era. We've got so many of the people there, but like, there's still more. I need Quark. I need Garrick. I need everybody on Deep Space Nine. So like what gives? I need my giant space station at least at a convention, right? Like, are we able to? And that's kind of a feeder question actually into like organized play, which was one of those things I did want to ask you guys about, because obviously when are we getting X is one of those questions where I'm like, I'm trying not to get you guys fired by spoiling too much stuff. I think that's the least I can do. But that does seem like that could be, big stuff like that could be great organized play stuff. Do you guys have anything that you can talk to about organized play and in-store events and convention events and things? I know there was something recent at I want to say at Origins. You guys had a new scenario. Is there more stuff like that planned?
Well, I can say plans for Deep Space Nine have been discussed. I can't get more specific right now.
Oh, well, that's super exciting, at least, But yeah.
Well, I mean, we were from the beginning. Of course, we're gonna talk about whether we can make whether we can make Mega Deep Space Nine or not. I mean, we will see.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Well, it's something I'm looking. I mean, I still have. I mean, I think you guys have each seen my like. I post. I'll take pictures of my ships with my attack wing Deep Space Nine, and like I do the whole thing. I think I put the Enterprise up. I tried to do a shot from below with like every peg that I had, so it could look like it was docking at one of the top pylons without having the base. I think it was something like 22 pegs. And of course the photo doesn't do it justice, but that thing was wobbling. When you get enough pegs under a ship, it starts to wobble a little bit.
I was gonna say it balanced at 22 pegs. I'm actually a little surprised.
It was an air controlled environment where I was like not breathing. So, yeah, but so it's definitely gonna. I mean, it fits the theme, and it's definitely gonna kind of work on that toy factor. But even if it's not a model, I think there's a lot of ways that. There's so many giant battles and like convention type things that would be really fun. Like, what can you do at a con that you can't do at home? And having like like the Klingon attack on Deep Space Nine, for example, which is this all out warfare. When maybe 8-9 people get together, as all playing Klingons, attacking one side together, and like, I don't know. I have all these awesome things, and it feels like organized play is a great way to do that, or special events and stuff like that, and. And if that's stuff that you guys are still working on, as we saw with Origins having some special stuff, even saw some new cool play mats out there, which I don't know if you guys have seen those yet, but they looked really cool. They had the lines printed on them. Are we going to be able to get stuff like that? That would be really exciting. So, I think. I don't know if there's any more you guys can talk about with regards to organized play or anything like that. I don't want to cut you off, so I'll give you a moment if there's anything more that you can say. But if not, we can move on.
Well, we're in an interesting place of we want to grow the game, and we also want to serve the fan base that we have. We are So I think Max and I are prioritizing making sure that people get answers to their questions for how to play.
Mm.
So that's kind of our top priority. Regular FAQs, and we are moving forward on the online rulebook. That's always been in the plan.
Mm.
I think that a more developed, organized play plan is something that is coming, but we may need to wait a little bit longer on that.
Okay. Well, I think
And, and that's
you go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say, you know, John Schaefer, who has a long history of doing, sort of like events for various minis games, is sort of spearheading that, and he's been doing everything he's put together has been really cool. The events the event scenarios he's put together have been great. Obviously we're consulting with him on that, but that's partly we can't speak to that as much just because it's a little bit out of our court. We're sort of more focused on ongoing game development,
Sure.
system maintenance, the sort of nuts and bolts of like making sure there's more staff.
So, and I think that's an important thing that you touched on, because the last FAQ that came out was a really interesting thing. And first off, it came out at just the right time, because the game was getting into more hands and more people. A lot more questions were coming up, and I've seen you guys really engage with the community and get this going. And even when it was getting close, there was a lot of like, relax, guys, we hear you, and it's coming. And so I want to say thank you to that, for all the hard work that you guys have been doing for keeping this game going and getting the answers out there. Because again, when you have a rule book, when you have a game that's as complex as this is, those situations are going to come up. I think one of my favorite ones was, we had a situation in one of my first games where a ship had made it into a system, but the rear was still out in deep space. And what happens if the shuttle wants to get launched out there? And like, should we say you can't launch a shuttle? Is there physically a wall behind you? Like, it's like, what makes sense? What doesn't make sense? Is the shuttle in deep space? Because now all of a sudden it's cut off from its mothership. So the way that you answer those questions, and it makes good sense. And so that was really helpful, and it helped shine some good lights on the games and the questions that people had. I think there's still some more that are kind of arising, and I think there's probably going to be quite a few that after everybody gets their hands on Rising Tensions that are going to need to be out there. But I do want to say thank you on behalf of myself and the community for all the work that you guys have put in onto that.
Well, I mean, thank everybody out in the community for your patience.
Yeah, and for collating questions. It was really valuable. We went through, the fan Discord. We went through BGG. Everywhere people had questions, we were able to go through, and they were collated nicely. And it was made it a lot easier. And obviously, it's our great playtesters went through a lot of stuff too and sussed out a lot of things. So we really have been appreciating the rigor that the community's been bringing, because it's brought up some great questions and helped articulate some things that we knew would need more clarification, but didn't necessarily know how best to address it. Mm-hmm. So it's been really valuable. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you guys for watching, and and thank you guys for joining us. I think I'm ready to wrap up, but I don't know if you guys have anything like that. If there was anything else that I missed or that needed to be covered or not. Okay, so with that, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode. Michael and Max, I want to thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to sit down and talk to us, and big thanks to WizKids for blessing off on this and all of the promos and the spoilers, so that it was really exciting to get a glimpse into Rising Tensions. And we'll be on the lookout for all the extra stuff with Sway and all the specifics on Cloaking, and how cool those new ships are going to feel when they're in our hands and we get to play with them, because that's also coming very soon. So thank you guys, and until next time, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. And to all you guys watching, thank you so much for watching, and big thanks to my patrons. You guys help keep this channel going. Thank you so much. May the force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. So say we all. You can't take the sky from me. The spice must flow, and always wash your socks.